back. Let's talk about the state of the nation. When we talk about the state of the nation, we navigate across board from security to politics to even the economy. We'll be joined in the program by Honorable Farouk Aliyu, former minority leader of the House of Representatives. He represented Barininkudu Buji Federal Constituency of Jigawa State. Honorable, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, I just need to establish, this period there has been some movement and defections and all of that. You are still a bona fide member of the APC. I want to be clear on that.
Absolutely, a very senior member of the party.
All right, fantastic. It looks like with what we're seeing playing now, because there's a lot to explain, expatiate on this particular conversation. So let's begin with party politics in the first instance. It looks like what is playing out now, we've seen what is going on in the PDP. We've seen what is going on with the Labour Party. At least those are the two leading opposition. I can talk about the NNPP as well. In one end, there's also an issue in that area at some point. It looks like the APC seems to be the stable political party as we speak. Is the APC really stable just because this is the ruling party? The stakes are a little bit higher if anything happens in terms of division and disagreement.
Well, APC is stable, of course, certainly more stable than other political parties in this country. And but in politics, you will always have disagreements. You will always have people who will not agree with one another. But then we, as a party, I mean the APC, one, we're the ruling party, so there are more things binding us together than dividing us. So I guess that also helps the party. And unfortunately, the other parties, really, they are not doing well because, there is no viable democracy without opposition. So I mean, it pains me how I see these political, the opposition parties, the way they are behaving in this country, honestly. I mean, we were once in opposition and we did what we could to entrench democracy in this country, to oppose the government, to objective analysis of policies of government and so on, for the good of all of us. But unfortunately, they are all bickering, fighting one another and so on, realigning and so on, wasting the people the time of Nigeria. And because when they are not concentrating in checking us in what we do in government, because look, no matter how good our policies are, the party in opposition is supposed to come with alternative methods or criticize what we're doing for the betterment of the country, so that people will get the best of the system. But unfortunately, in their own wisdom, they feel they will continue with infighting, which is not good for the country, not good for democracy as well.
All right, Mr. Farouk, two things I want to ask in one. But the broad question will be, in your view, because I know you are not afraid to speak your mind, what is the President Bola Tinubu administration doing wrong in your view as a member of your party? As you've agreed by your own statement, it can never be perfect. There's always something to do better, something to learn from. And when you talk about being critical of the government, there's a perception that this government is quite hostile to dissenting voices. And there are many instances to that effect. And they are not doing great at managing dissenting voices. Some may argue to the contrary. But in your view, what is this government doing wrong that you feel like, no, this is not our playbook? Those are some of the assertions by Nasser El-Rufai, which is why he said he left the party.
Well, you see, it's not in my place to criticize my government, really, absolutely. I mean, this is the role of the opposition. The opposition is supposed to come out with criticism of us, of what we do. I mean, I can't sit here and tell you this is what I think is not good. Of course, there are challenges in any system. I can tell you, when we were in the opposition, there are so many things we said, we did. We did it differently because we are not in government. But now when we're in government, we found out certain things that we had assumptions were wrong. So now these are things we're trying to do. So to me, Bola Tinubu is doing very well. To me, Bola Tinubu is doing his best. To me, that's why he's elected.
song which the NBC clamped down on. I hope you can hear me, Mr. Farouk.
Well, maybe now I can hear you now, but before I couldn't hear you.
Pardon me. So we just had a conversation with Idris Abdul Karim. I don't know if you caught that, a Nigerian musician whom the NBC clamped down on his song, where he was basically just venting, like the everyday Nigerian, talking about the economy, insecurity, and the rest. So when people hear you say that this government is doing well, and they look at what they say, the situation on the ground, would you say it's because, yet again, you're a member of the APC? Does that preclude you from speaking the minds of the people, at least from the experience of your people?
No, listen. I mean, first of all, I totally don't agree with the NBC. To me, they were too overzealous. To me, they didn't do well. To me, they're not doing well, because what they did is certainly wrong. I mean, free speech, people are supposed to come out and criticize us. So, honestly, I hope the government will speak to them, the Minister of Information in particular, will tell them what they did is wrong. You know, I mean, he should come out and say whatever. Anybody can come out and say anything, but then there are lines that people should not cross. Simple. There are lines one shouldn't cross in trying to, you know, with your fundamental rights or freedom of speech and so on and so forth. Now, coming to the government, whether I'm not part of all the issues and so on, of course, as a Nigerian, there are challenges. As a government also, we have challenges in governance. And just like what I told you earlier, let me give you an example. While we were in opposition, I remember very well Jonathan, when he was trying to, when he increased the price of petrol pump price. We were all over the country demonstrating against what he did. Now we know better. Now we know better that, look, the government cannot continue to subsidize petroleum products. Simple. So these are kind of things that I'm saying, you know, that while you are in opposition, there are certain things. While you're not in government, there are certain things that you don't know. But when you get in there, the reality will stare you on the face, and then you do the right thing.
But it looks like there is this growing coalition against President Bola Tinubu, particularly from the north. And we've seen this series of visits to former President Muhammadu Buhari, almost his own becoming a Mecca of sorts. So you had former Vice President, former governor who was in your party, now in the SDP, and a group of people, powerful people from the north, visiting him. And, you know, they said, well, it's not for this reason and that. But you can't remove the fact that there is this growing dissension against President Bola Tinubu in the north. From where you sit, yes, from Jigawa State, have you seen this? What do you think is responsible for it? And do you think the president can withstand this coming storm?
Well, when you talk about dissenting voices from the north, this is what I call connivance of the elites. And I call on the public, the masses of this country, to start teaching us a lesson as elites. Look at all those people, so-called people against Tinubu from the northern part of the country. Let me take Nasir El-Rufai, for example. This was the same person who came out all over the place saying that the North shall vote for Tinubu, and that any northerner who does not agree to vote for Tinubu is just not a good northerner. He did everything, he abused everybody. Now, Tinubu got elected. Something happened, of course he was promised ministerial appointment, it didn't happen, whatever. All of a sudden he has moved to opposition now. So, is it about our country? Is it about the party? Or is it about self-interest? So you could see that all these people, it's their personal interest. That's why I said, look, the people need to start teaching us a lesson, the elites. Because we, the elites of this country, were one and the same. Whenever anything does not go well with you, you just start bringing the religious kite, flying the religious kite, or the ethnic kite, and so on and so forth. Now, the North gave President Bola Tinubu votes. And the North will continue to, because look, it has got nothing to do with where you come from. If in the wisdom of some of my leaders from the north, feel they don't want Tinubu again. Okay, let's wait for the time to come. It is not political time now, it's governor's time. And they can go ahead and continue to criticize or continue to align themselves, and then when the time comes, we are also northerners. There are northerners that can die for Tinubu, somebody like me, and we are all proteges of Muhammadu Buhari. I, Farouk Adamu Aliyu, you know, if you are going to mention 5 people that started with President Muhammadu Buhari, I'm certainly one of them. I'm with Tinubu, Buhari is with Tinubu, and as of today, one of the most influential northerners, or the very most influential northerner in this country, is President Muhammadu Buhari, and he had never ever deviated from working or aligning himself with President Tinubu. So we, when I said we, most people that matter, that are with Buhari, would certainly work with Tinubu. And as I said, it is all a matter of self-centeredness. I mean, they have lost out. My friend, everybody is a very close friend of mine. He has lost out, and so he thinks he wants to belong. So the best way for him to do is to move to. the best way for him to do is to move to the opposition. Well, so be it. We are waiting for them, and I just hope we'll continue to play the politics clean manner, so that for the betterment of this country. And then look, at the time, when the time comes, if the people of this country, in their wisdom, they don't want President Bola Tinubu, so be it. But that does not mean because you don't want Tinubu, you will start talking nonsense about him or whatever, and so on and so forth. Start saying that he doesn't like the Northerners and so on, which is not true. It is not true. My friend Nasru El-Rufai didn't know that Tinubu did not like the Northerners until now, when he doesn't have an appointment. I mean, I'm a shining example of, look, if you want help this country, if you want to help democracy, you don't have to be in government. The last time I had official as a government position was in 2007. I had never stopped campaigning or speaking for President Buhari. I will never stop speaking for President Bola Tinubu. But whenever things are done wrong, we don't come on television station and start talking about what we did wrong. We go into the room, we have access, we tell the president, we tell to power, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu knows me very well. I can look at him in the face and tell him the truth. But I don't need to come to channels or any other place to say this is what he's doing that is wrong.
If I may come in, Mr. Farouk, so let's take two things in one. First, is it that he lost out? I'm talking about Nasser El-Rufai. Did he lose out, or he was not carried along? So maybe you answer that question. But the more important question for me is the reality of Nigerians' quality of life under President Bola Tinubu. Life is hard. Life is difficult. Fundamentally, what used to be basic is almost now becoming a luxury. In fact, it is a luxury. Electricity, the price of food, and all of that. These are the things that are important to Nigerians. Since you speak for the government, whether officially or unofficially, don't you think that this is the time? He's going to do his midterm in a few weeks. Let me just use a few weeks from now, because May 29, just next month. It's time to begin to look at a way to review some of his direction and policy direction to see how Nigerians can be better. The purchasing power, we may be 200 million, but what was the purchasing power of the average Nigerian? Those are the critical issues. We could banter the big numbers. I'm familiar with economics and my background of the macroeconomics data. Oh, debt to revenue has improved. I know all of that. Our FX has improved. What do you call it now? Our reserve, although unencumbered, is about 23 billion. We know all of those big things. We can talk about it. But what is important to the man I live here and speak on the street and all of that is his quality of life before Tinubu came to power and what it is right now. That is what is important.
Okay, yeah, I totally agree with you. The quality of life is not better than before Tinubu came on board. But then what are the issues? I mean, first of all, Nigeria is not an island. Nigeria is also a part of the global community. These challenges that we find in this country are happening in all parts of the world. Now, how do we go about it? That's exactly what the government is trying to do now. Of course, there are difficulties. Of course, things are not getting better as at today. But there are some indices that, yes, certainly at the end of the tunnel there will be light. I mean, you remember when the former president spoke about going back to the farm. People have trooped back to the farm. And things are improving gradually. Whether this is how the government wants it, certainly not. Certainly people are suffering. Certainly there are challenges. Certainly people are not happy. But then are there things that the government is doing deliberately to make these happenings? No. The government is up and about. The government, you could see how the government is trying to control the foreign exchange. You could see how foreign investment is coming into the country. You could see how infrastructure is being done in this country. You could see how more monies are going to the states. So, but when issues come, people talk about federal government, federal government, federal government. Forgetting the fact that we also have the states. What makes the union, all of us. So certainly there are challenges in this country. Certainly there are difficulties. But just like what I said, these things, are they deliberately done to hurt the people? No. These things are done deliberately to make sure that, look, my children, our grandchildren will not be in this kind of situation in the distant future.
So you admit that life is difficult under President Tinubu's government. You admit
absolutely. Life is difficult.
Right.
I do.
And you admit that Nigerians have a right to voice their displeasure without being clamped down. They can protest peacefully without being clamped down upon.
Absolutely.
But
absolutely.
It doesn't take away the fact that you...
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it doesn't take away the fact that there's still some other things that the president has done that you within his party should be able to speak to it, especially because he has a national impact. And I'll speak to the state of emergency in Rivers State. For example, you stood against, you've said that time and again, the third-term bid of former President Olusegun Obasanjo when you were in the ANPP, because for you, you didn't say it in the Constitution, and you've talked about how you rejected lots of money and all of that. And now we see a president who is doing what a lot of people have said is unconstitutional. Whether you're in the APC or the PDP or the Labour Party, the Constitution is quite clear. Why, again, is it that we don't see people from within the party coming out to speak to the Constitution, regardless of the fact that you are in the APC or not? Have you looked at that issue? Have you looked at the Constitution? Is that something that you find curious, Honorable?
Yeah, you see, it's also subjective what you're saying. That's why people need to go and get interpretation. Whether what the president did is totally, completely unconstitutional, but it's left for the courts to decide. But you see, as a president, you do not sit by and watch your country disintegrate. The political situation in Rivers certainly calls for drastic measures. Now, whether the measures taken were the right ones is left for the Rivers people to see. But from my position here, I think what the president did was right, honestly. To put state of emergency there so that the prime actors will sit together and know that, look, there's somebody with a big stick. That if you try to bring the roof down on all of us, somebody should tell you that, look, hey, calm down, look at it, and so on. And look, I think the people of Rivers State need to be supported by all of us. All of us, I mean the whole Nigeria, need to support them in such a way that there will be peace, because politicians are the architects of the problem in this country. And you could see, even in that River State, it is a matter of self, because it's fight between Wike and Fubara, which means if you look at it, it's like a family matter. Now, should the president sit by and allow them to continue to fight? Just like what the Attorney General said, that the government took action so that not to further bring problem in River State. Because if God forbid, that the State Assembly had gone ahead to impeach Fubara, there could be bloodshed.
Right. Mr. Farouk.
And Mr. President did this thing to ensure that, look, the issues in rivers do not degenerate into fisticuffs.
Mr. Farouk, two things. Just as we wind down, we just have about 2 minutes to go. So we know the Supreme Court is going to make their own interpretation, but there's nothing in the Constitution that gives a role to sole administrator. All of us can agree to that. The argument here is the suspension of elected officials in terms of the president. The president has the power. 305 gives him the power to declare a state of emergency. Discretional latitude as to whether he can suspend elected officials is a different kettle of fish, which is not in the Constitution, which the Supreme Court will have to help us decide how far it can go, because Section 1, Subsection 2 of the Constitution is very clear on how Nigeria should be governed. So I would like you to speak to that as well, because at the end of the day, it's going to be a constitutional issue, which you said is subjective as far as this is concerned. We're running a federation in that sense. Else we may have to unknowingly raise dictatorship if we're not careful. So in your view, when the Constitution is not quite clear on some of these things, how far can one go in protecting the lives and property of people, in your view?
You see, I want you to also understand that our Constitution also sometimes speaks from both sides of the cheek. Some, like the president, yes, if you look at the Constitution, the president has no powers to do what he did in Rivers. But then if you flip the other side, you remember we had doctrine of necessity in this country. So in the wisdom of Mr. President, if he thinks doing this was the best thing, he did it, and at least there is peace in Rivers. But if the Supreme Court says, look, Mr. President, what you did is wrong, I'm sure he will quickly return to status quo.
All right, Womo, thank you so much. It's always interesting to have you, Mr. Farouk Aliyu, but the luxury of time is what we don't have. We could keep you here for another 1 hour, but we're totally out of time. Former minority leader of the House of Representatives, representing Berenin Kudu, Buji Federal Constituency of Jigawa State. Thank you so much as well, because I know that you speak the truth as much as you can. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get to the next leg of the conversation. Join us again.